When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadabji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 46, Stepping into an Unexpected Path of Truths, Leading Her to Something Incredible. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a wonderful and daring guest, Stephanie Jones. Stephanie focuses on bringing a new and modern narrative to mental illness while fighting stigma and breaking intergenerational trauma. Her aim is to fill the very large knowledge and experience gap between having and recognizing mental health challenges and successfully getting help. Stephanie has worked with prominent leaders from various industries, including banking, retail, government, farming, healthcare, and community hubs, tailoring mental health programming and examining the complicated intersection between one's workplace and mental health and what organizations can do to support their staff. Stephanie is a second-generation Canadian born to West Indian parents and lives in Toronto, Ontario. Her debut fictional novel, inspired by her journey with mental illness, named A Hidden Life, will be released in the upcoming summer of 2022. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi, morning. Thank you for having me. That was an amazing intro. Yes.
Stephanie, for sure. You have a brilliant mind and you're doing incredible things. And it's really so nice to have you come on the show today. I am truly grateful for your willingness to brave telling an important part of your story. And I feel strength and support from you as we take a stance together to help break barriers of mental stigma. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to talk about my journey, have a few laughs, have a few, serious things here and there. But I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Amazing. And Stephanie, in case you're still wondering, the podcast is all about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it is directly about a mental health struggle or something else. In society, we know that no matter what a person's story is, there is impact on an individual's own mental health in some way, and that typically remains tucked away. So the purpose of this platform is meant to serve in a way to break these barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So that's what I'm hoping for here, is that you and we are going to be able to encourage people by sharing and telling, because there's so much reservation or hesitation for expressing what's been endured. And so in light of that, I'm bringing forward a trend called the mental beauty rethink. Stephanie, what are your thoughts when you hear those words, the mental beauty rethink?
Yeah, I love it. And I actually, as you were describing how things are right now in regarding mental health, how we view it, we do talk about it quite a lot. Anyone who's a mental health advocate brings that up, right? We don't treat our mental health like we do our physical health.
Mhm.
Funny enough, I was thinking about, I had a quote for today and I was going to say mental health isn't sexy because it's true. No one wants to talk about it. They associate it with
Mhm.
terrible things
Mhm.
and they only kind of see it that way. And I think because of that, we keep a lot of that inside. No one wants
Mhm.
to show what mentally they're going through. You might want to show how good do you look when your hair's done and your makeup is
Mhm.
done, but you don't want to show that inner struggle and be vulnerable and open it up. So I love what you're trying to do here and thinking about, how do we make it beautiful? Because it is beautiful. Everyone's journey
Mhm.
and what they've been through, their growth, their story, they're all beautiful.
Mhm. And so you talk about it, first words that come to mind for you is like mental health is not sexy. So then when you hear the word mental beauty, what's triggered in your mind?
Excitement and
Yeah?
celebration,
Mhm.
um, truth, and I think happiness too, because you're not going to get to happiness if you're still have a lot of unresolved issues inside or inner issues and your mental health is struggling.
Yeah, let's just embrace all parts of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and giving me that insight. And just the way that you said it, mental health is not sexy. I never put it that way, but I totally see how that's the reaction that people get when you start talking about mental health. They have that gremlin look on their face, like, "Huh?" or they cringe, or they all of a sudden can run marathons, they're ready to bolt.
Honestly, it the saying just crossed my mind, honestly, but I
Yeah,
think it's very true because we do think about physical health,
there's so much truth in it.
like the gym. You're in the gym, you work out, you look great. Let's get fit, but no one talks about how your mental health looks like.
Like, we've definitely made some progress in society for sure, I'll give you that. But we've got a ways to go. So I just thought that if we were able to have this trend, it could be received in a positive way. All right. So I'm very eager to uncover your story. So I hope that you are ready for all of my questions, Stephanie.
I'm ready.
Just what I love hearing. Okay. All right, Stephanie. So give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. What would it say?
I think it would say a hidden life. I first got diagnosed at 15, and today it's been over 20 years of living with mental illness. And honestly, a lot of that was hidden.
Mhm,
Nobody would have guessed if they weren't my close friends.
mhm,
I got great marks. I did extracurricular. I
mhm,
went to university. I've worked full time, but it was always something that I was dealing with on my own or with those
mhm,
closer. It was hard. It was hard
mhm,
to not only deal with, but having a secret on top of everything is such a rough thing to go through and then have to not tell anyone and not talk about it and pretend that you're like everyone else or you're fine is
mhm.
it took a huge toll over 20 years.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a hidden life. It's a few words, but the symbolization of what it represents for you, those secrets and how you had to
Mm.
live your life and how you've emerged from that is very impactful. So yeah, I'm all ears now. I'm ready to hear more about your story. So unpack it for me. So tell me everything. The who, what, when, where's.
Yeah, so my first thinking is
Mm.
like I'm going to tell you all my secrets, but I'm not. I'm going to tell you some of them, not all of them.
Okay.
But yeah, so as I mentioned, there were bits of trauma, etc., around 15, and that's when it really started. The depression was bad, anxiety and OCD started, and I was very suicidal in the very beginning.
Mhm.
And that was kind of, I think, the breaking point for my family. Like they were like, okay, you need help. We need to we need to join forces and figure this out together.
Okay.
So I've been in therapy since, and I realize now that might sound like people would be like, why did it take you 20 years? But for me, the thing with the system is it's not like healthcare. It's not like you go to the doctor, you kind of maybe you've had a fever for the day or you're not feeling well. They can kind of examine you and, tell you, go home and take this medicine and call me in a few days if you're still sick or not feeling well. It doesn't work like that with mental health. first of all, yes, you might tell your family doctor, but maybe they don't have the network, or maybe they don't have the knowledge, or they're not big on mental health. There are a lot of reasons why they might not have what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, maybe they will refer you to a therapist that they know, but that doesn't always happen. And then once you're referred, it's kind of you're left to your own devices. There's no support system. It's you advocating, it's you finding a therapist, you figuring out medication. Yes, there are programs, but it's very much so you advocating for yourself during the most difficult thing you might be going through ever in life.
And so this started for you all from when you were 15. You had to start navigating the system on your own?
Yes, I would say yes. I was lucky. I have a big support system. I have a big family, but the sole responsibility is still on you.
Mm-hmm.
Even things like opening up to your therapist, being honest, working at it in the progression, it's still on you.
Do you find, I'm just intrigued when you say opening up to your therapist and being honest. Like, I know that most people don't go into a therapy session with the intention of lying. But do you find that sometimes denial gets in the way? Like you just might not be ready to accept certain things, or be able to accept that you've experienced certain things, to be able to talk about them openly, or to be truthful to yourself enough to own certain things that have occurred?
So, I loved what you say about no one goes in planning to lie. For me, I would omit things in the beginning, because suicide ideation, that's scary, or OCD triggers, it's not normal. So who wants to talk about that? I've done that in the beginning too. I kind of, I don't feel like telling them about all this. Let's talk about this for a little while. And I still do it sometimes now, but it's because now I have more control in terms of, okay, I need to prioritize. My anxiety's out of hand. I need to focus on this right now. I can talk about other things another time.
Right. So you're kind of like doing a little therapy filter sharing system that you had.
Yes.
Like you were filtering what you were going to share at what points.
The therapy before the therapy.
Okay.
But I would say, I think because it's been so long, I'm good with navigating those type of things. So, when I think about people right now, I'm scared that they might not feel comfortable enough to open up right away, or they'll be ashamed.
Okay.
I push for the mental health professionals because they're not going to judge you. They've heard everything ever that you could possibly imagine. And I think people are going to them with the worst things that have happened to them, right?
Yeah.
A big factor though is if you have to do it when you're comfortable. So you do need to build that relationship, and therapists know that. They know that it takes time to have this bond and for the person to open up. And I think, it's important in the years to come that people are open with it. Like, spend the time now to bond and have that relationship, and plan to be more honest. Because I think if we're not really talking about what's happening right now, it's going to end badly. That could be looked at in many different ways.
So take us back to some of your stories. So are you able to talk about what led up to you recognizing that your mental health was impacted, or what that trauma was about, or what exactly took place?
For the trauma part, that was for me a longer journey.
Okay.
So funny enough, I've been looking back quite a bit. I'm probably in the best mental health state I've ever been in since 15. The way I am now, I think this is who I was before I got sick, to be honest. And obviously not the same person. I'm not 14, but the personality, the attitude, that's who I think I really was. And I feel more that way now. So it did take a long time to process all that. But looking back, I've also realized that there's a hierarchy. Just like Maslow's pyramid. Have you ever?
Yeah. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. So, at the time I was so depressed. I was dealing with suicidal ideation. There are things at the bottom that need to be addressed ASAP, right? There was no way I could have walked in and talked about my trauma and be like, fix, you know what I mean? It just wasn't possible at that point. That takes time. So I think you have to make sure you're safe in certain respects, and therapists have to too. If you're having suicidal ideation, they need to talk about that first and right away. One of my first therapists, he had tried to do CBT with me, so cognitive behavioral therapy. And I was just, I think I was 16. I was like, that's nice. Like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me.
Right.
This is doing nothing for me. I might have been a bit older, 17 or 18, but, I wasn't ready for that. Now, I did CBT maybe 10 years ago, and it really helped me shift the way I thought.
Right.
that was a time when I was ready for it and that I could, because I was in a safer place. I wasn't, the hot mess or whatever you want to call it, where I was
Mm-hmm.
struggling to take care of myself
Mm-hmm.
and push and do things like go to school. You kind of have to have that foundation.
So when you were struggling to take care of yourself, I heard you say, pushing yourself to go to school. What else was the struggle like? Like what were you impacted by? Like what was that like?
I think it was a lot of just, and I don't want to sound dramatic, but it was a lot of suffering. I think just mentally and emotionally, the pain, it's not the same as physical pain, but it's on the same level, I think. I had a lot of panic attacks. I was having anxiety about school. My emotions were all over the place. Also, another thing I'm realizing is I couldn't regulate my emotions. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
regulating them properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I also didn't know how to self-soothe. I couldn't pause and think about things and think things through. It was much different.
What kinds of things would trigger you?
Sometimes school, like I'd be studying for an exam and it's so hard to describe, but I'd be studying and I think I'd be worried or stressed out about it and I would just get emotional, like crying, throwing things, really just struggling. And it wasn't because of it wasn't the test. It was more so where I was at in life, if that makes sense. I was struggling and things were setting me off. Luckily I had, again, my siblings were able to step in and be calm and walk me through things. And it's so funny because I always did well, and I always did well. I still got 90s, like, you know what I mean? It was such a
Mm-hmm.
bizarre situation. But again, looking back, I think when you have trauma, it shows itself in different ways, and you don't realize
Mm-hmm.
how it's manifesting or how it's connected.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel comfortable talking about any of what that trauma was like for you, whatever it is that you experienced?
So no, that's one thing. I want to keep to myself for now. I think I tell everything. I'm very open, and
Mm-hmm.
I tell a lot of stories, and I want to be, and I want to resonate with people. But that's something I choose to keep to myself.
Perfectly understandable. Okay, so it sounds like, you didn't hide from your family in terms of things that you were going through. They did become a support system. It doesn't sound like the entire outside world of your world was aware of what you might have been going through. And even though you were supported with your family and you had a big support system, did you ever find that you were struggling to be understood, or do you feel like you had enough people to sort of support you in that way?
I think it was very difficult for my dad in particular because he's West Indian and Jamaican, and they struggled to come to Canada. They did what they had to do. They hustled for us, and to them, it's mental illness is, and I hate saying this, but it's the truth, is for white people. That's what's
That was the impression. That was the tone. Okay.
the tone of the whole situation. So, that was hard. There were teachers, though, who knew something was wrong. They just didn't know what. Again, I was hardcore academics and extracurricular. My high school, I was the last of four. My siblings went there. So they knew me, right? Teachers knew me. I was close to certain ones. I had my own teachers that I was close with. Some of them knew that something was wrong. They just didn't necessarily know what, and I didn't have to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be kind to each other. This is one of the things we need to think about when it comes to things like mental health and mental illness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In these random interactions, and something that might seem small to you means the world to people, to someone else.
Right. And so while you were on this path of navigating your mental health and well-being and navigating the supports and what doctors knew or didn't know, or
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you kind of were left to sort of sort it out on your own. I mean, you did mention that you've been in therapy and you've seen what I would guess is different therapists over the years, maybe based on circumstance or what other life is bringing you, or if you've moved
Yeah.
for school or different things like that. But in that process, did you like come across any mental health support that you felt you were dismissed or disregarded in any way?
Yes. So the very first one I saw, it was not a great experience. I was 15, 16. It was the first one my family decided to go
Hmm.
to. I think I was there with family members. I just don't remember who exactly, but
Okay.
it was in this woman's house. She was a psychiatrist. She was very old school, like plastic on her couch, old school.
Oh, wow.
And, you know,
Plastic, as in like all the furniture is covered in plastic so
yes,
you could slide around?
yes. My
Oh,
grandma
wow.
has that. I'm like, I don't understand. You never use the couch then. What, so anyways, what she told me was, you're 16, you should be out dancing, Harrison Paxel. So she gave me samples and that was it. And there wasn't really any conversation about what was
Mhm,
wrong or what I was struggling with. And to be
mhm.
honest, to me, that's dangerous.
And when you say Paxil, what you mean is you're talking about medication, right? She prescribed you
Yes.
medication, an antidepressant.
Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't get any coaching or guidance on what this is and what to
No,
expect. No
no,
conversation about that.
no.
Right. Yeah, that is dangerous.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
now that I am studying social work and I have all this experience, that is super dangerous.
Mhm,
Medication, why are you taking it? How long do you plan to take it? Side effects. Like just a long list of things you need to discuss before you really go on medication.
mhm,
And that includes things like talk therapy and perhaps different ways to look at how you're gonna get better and what you want to use. You know what I mean? The tools that you want to use.
mhm.
It wasn't the greatest experience, and that was probably one of the worst of not being heard.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you really felt like not heard, very disregarded. And it doesn't sound like she was getting it curious at all about what actually could have been going on for you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, I was fortunate. I had a great support system, and I could walk away with that bad experience and continue on and not have it hinder me for the rest of my life, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
could see other
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people and etc.
Right. So tell me more about how you have been affected having gone through this unexpected path of getting to know your mental health and the mental well-being states that you've been in and the diagnosis that you've had now. Tell me more about how you've been affected.
Because it's been so long. I've gone through so many
Mm-hmm.
life periods. So you're a young person, high school, you're undergrad, fresh grad, post grad,
Mm-hmm.
you're a newbie in the job market. I like to tell people that, everything that you guys struggle with, or sometimes I call it normies, which I should stop because that's not nice. But,
Mm-hmm.
people without mental illness, all the things that were hard for you or challenging were like a million times harder for me or anyone else who lives with mental illness. And I'm high functioning, right? So I don't even
Mm-hmm.
know what my life would have been like if I didn't have supports or I couldn't function. Given all that, I was still struggling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these are things like suicidal ideation, depression, just being in dark places, a lot of just inner struggle. And yeah, I want to say suffering because that's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I beat myself up mentally for years for
Mm-hmm.
not feeling like I was enough, not feeling like successful.
Mm-hmm.
Just all these kind of stages. It was much, much more difficult for me to go through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even like self actualization and the change you make as a young adult, those are all very hard times.
Right. So those are all the different points that you recall really being big ones for you. So, Stephanie, when people come to see me in the therapy space, people are typically in one of three places when they do come to see me. Some people are getting started. They know that they need to talk about different things and explore different things and unpack different parts of their journey. And so they look to me to help them get started. There's some people who are in the thick of it. They're in the middle of navigating something. They're ready to go deeper and they're ready to like really immerse themselves in what they're looking for or needing. And some people are like looking back. Some it's when I say looking back, sometimes they're looking for some sort of a closure so they can move forward. Some people are looking to make peace with something or they want to be able to close a chapter in their life. Where would you say that you are? What part of the journey would you say that you're in? Would you say that you're in the beginning, the middle, or the end? Or maybe not end, but looking back.
Yeah, I would say the last 20 years, I do feel like I'm at an end point because I'm beginning a new, very different life than I had before. By that, I
Mhm,
mean, I'm well, I can self regulate my emotions, I have all these tools, I've processed a lot of things.
mhm,
I'm on the right medications. My life is very different in terms of my personality, attitude, the way I view things, patience, etc. So I really feel like I'm starting this new part of my life and I'm ready to let go everything I went through. It made me the woman I am today, which a lot of people tell me. At first, I didn't love that, but it's the truth. It made me who I am. So I'm ready to go forward, being that new person.
With the new reclaimed you, right? Ready
Yes,
to
yes,
move forward with the newly
yes,
reclaimed Stephanie.
yes, yes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is my life. Like, let's do this, and just
Right.
be happy and enjoy things. I think just looking back and on the journey, I would not have been in a position to help anyone at all
Mm-hmm.
in the last 20 years. And right now I'm at a place where, like, okay, I'm at a place where I can help people
Mm-hmm.
and be steady and be strong and convey these messages and give advice and information that can help them. I wouldn't have been able to do this 5,
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 years ago. And I truly believe that this is what I was meant to do. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a coincidence that COVID started and everyone's struggling with their mental health, and I'm in a place where I can help. I think that is what I'm meant to do.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you want to remember about the process of your healing journey so far?
I would say the kindness and relationships I've had have all been very special.
Mm-hmm.
And just when I look back at the people who have helped me, I'm just in awe.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes from my siblings to my parents to my friends. They were like, I had a girlfriend. I had just finished university and I was not doing well, and I had called her at work and I was crying. I was just in hysterics, and she was at lunch at her job,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
she took the time. I look back at
Mm-hmm.
that and I'm like, 23-year-old calling another 23-year-old
Mm-hmm.
in a mental health crisis, which a lot of people never witness. I still look back and I still tell that girlfriend, like, I will be loyal to you for the rest and thankful for the rest of my life. So moments
Mm-hmm.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
I would say the relationships, those are huge, huge takeaways for me.
Yeah, it sounds like the relationships were something that you have a lot of gratitude for. But what about your own process in that healing? What do you want to remember about that in terms of your healing journey? The stuff from the inside. What do you want to remember or keep with you to help remind you that I got here?
I think the peace I feel.
Peace. Okay.
I didn't have much peacefulness.
So, how do you know that you have the peace? How would you remind yourself that I have the peace now? What does it look like for you?
I think how I react to situations, how I
Mm-hmm.
feel,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that ability. I didn't have the space. And my thought processes are very different, very different.
Mm-hmm.
I probably shouldn't go into this too deeply, and I won't, but I was in a car accident recently. And, if that was Stephanie 5 years ago, she would have been like, why me? I can't believe this happened.
Right.
I just had these great things in my life. Bad things always happen to me. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this. And like me, Stephanie, now I'm like, yeah, that's, it sucked. It was rough, but you'll be
Mm-hmm.
fine. Like, be thankful for damages that did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Thankful that you walked away from it. It's all material things. I don't know if I could have had that. And that's what I mean by peace.
Right. So you really had a mindset shift too.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's really, really great. Okay. And so I know we've talked in bits and pieces throughout the conversation so far about your untold story and how you've been affected and how things have come up. I'm curious and eager to know more about how your mental health was affected. And you've been sharing, but I'm so much more curious about the things that you mentioned. Like, you threw around some comments about suffering. So I'm curious about the suffering, about what those panic attacks were like. What did they look
Mm.
like? When you said your emotions were all over the place, well, what emotions did you experience when they went all over the place? What did that look like? So, are you able to share any of that?
Yeah, I a lot of it was internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not enough, or like, I'm stupid, or I will never be as successful as, or seen in this light, or there's just a lot of terrible inner dialogue.
Well,
And
it's a pretty harsh inner critic.
yeah, yeah, it's
Pretty
not.
harsh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sometimes I would stay in bed. I wouldn't tell you all my secrets. I was engaged, and he had
Mm-hmm.
broken it off around right when I was going to book the venue. And, I moved back home. I stayed in bed for weekends for maybe a year or two.
Okay.
I didn't do anything. I slept, I got up to eat and shower, and I went back to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd have these times where I was crying and just despair and just a lot of raw emotions. I wasn't dealing with things. It was still rough, like anyone would have had a rough time, but I was
Mm-hmm.
struggling to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
again, suicidal ideation.
Right.
I think I'm going off tangent a bit, but I think with suicidal ideation, people don't really understand it because it's not about like hurting others. It's about ending that pain.
Yeah. It was a deep desire to end the pain. So
Yeah.
when you had that
Yeah.
ideation, what kind of thoughts were you having? My curiosity leads to like, were you actively thinking about a plan of,
Mm,
okay, I can do this? Or was it like, this is so bad, I just don't want to be here anymore? And if there's a way that I could end this, I would. Like, was there more of a passivity in that process? What was it like?
there were moments where I had a plan, some not, I would say, but it was a lot about like, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of like, I can't, what was happening in my life at the time or how bad my depression was. It was just this feeling, I can't do this. Like, I can't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wanting it to just be done because you can't do it anymore. You're not able to go through it and process it. And I think also I've realized the trauma was morphing itself into in different ways.
Okay. In which ways?
The ways I was even anxious about school. Everyone's anxious. Okay, say like exams coming up, or you're writing your thesis and you want to go get into grad school. Like everyone stresses about that, but for me, it was more severe stressing and anxiety and worrying. And I think all of that was because of the trauma.
Yes. Yes. So it just would show up. The stress and anxiety of those things would just have it be that much easier for it to manifest and just kind of creep up without you realizing it's happening, and then it's pretty prominent.
Yeah, I always knew something was wrong.
But did you feel like it was in the background, but then it would just get really strong suddenly? Would that be an experience for you?
Like the emotions and the thoughts, or
Yeah. The emotions and the thoughts, were they surging from time to time, or was it something that was experiencing constantly?
I would say surging
Mm-hmm.
here and there. But I think the the one of the themes overall was I was still struggling. But I should have said this in the beginning. I still have good times in life. Like I still, I had my youth. I went clubbing. I had great girlfriends. I
Mm-hmm.
traveled. I did a lot of great things,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I had amazing relationships. So it wasn't just me alone in the dark. I don't want to convey that. What I want to convey is that I was doing all those things, but I was also severely depressed, and the close people knew that, right? Because they saw me and they heard my
Mm-hmm.
conversation, the way I talked, and they knew it wasn't normal. And it's funny because in the very beginning, I was on a trip with my dad, and he had said, "You saying you want to kill yourself isn't normal." And it was such a weird
Mm-hmm.
moment for me because for some reason, it took time to process. I don't know what I thought. I don't know if I acknowledged it or thought it was normal, but just the way he
Mm-hmm.
said it, and I just felt like
Mm-hmm.
I'm really sick. There is something wrong here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you had that moment of recognizing that, okay, I'm not well, I need help, or I need to work through this a bit more, or this is a serious issue, what would be the first thing that you'd want to do? Because I know that this is, my understanding is this is something that you would experience often, right? Like you'd have
Mm,
these thoughts, and
mhm.
someone might be telling you, like, hey, this is not normal. And then you would have that realization or recognition that, okay, oh, this is not healthy. So then what would happen for you next? What would that lead you to?
So I've always had a therapist.
Mhm.
For me, and I was mentioning that in the beginning, I needed a therapist always, pretty much.
Mhm. Mhm.
Some people go for the 3 months and they're like, "That was great, goodbye."
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
me, I needed that support, and I was going
Yeah.
through so many different things at different stages of my life. So in that sense, I was always prepared. When I first started university, first thing I went and did was find a psychologist on campus
Right.
because I knew I needed that support.
So you were being proactive. Yeah.
And again, that's like
Yeah.
I get that from my family. We're very, I say type A and by the book,
Mhm.
like be prepared. So,
Mhm.
those are the type of
Mhm.
things. And that happened again. And, I graduated. Then what? I still need support. So I always was engaged in that sense of let's prepare for this and the struggle that's ahead. and make sure you have the support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Stephanie, given everything that you have shared so far along this journey of yours and this unexpected path that you've been on and all the different hurdles that have come your way and how you've coped and managed, what would be your key message to the listeners of our show? What would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that there is help and support out there,
Mm-hmm.
especially right now. I want people to have the courage to find help, and I want people to be open-minded, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the issues as well for getting help. For my undergrad therapist, he was this redhead, like very tall, he had a long beard, like hippie kind of guy. And I think some people would have looked at him and been like, this is not a therapist for me. No, thank you. How's he going to help a young woman, a young Black woman? But he was a key relationship for me, right? So I want people to be open-minded. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
necessarily where your gems or support will come from. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Don't be, scared to speak up and be honest about what you're really going through to a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to add though, finding, BIPOC therapists, or if you're looking for someone of a certain gender, ethnicity, language, etc., that's okay. Push to find that. But in the meantime, find someone that you could see that can help you right now, and just be that support until you find someone.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also help you search too. And if they're a good therapist and you tell them, no, thank you, I want a Black therapist, most of them will be like, okay, let me help you find one.
Mm-hmm.
The good ones will. So don't wait to get help. Don't wait till you're worse. Don't wait till you're suicidal. If you're really struggling, be honest with yourself and try to find help. And again, there are just so many resources out there right now. There's apps, there's websites, there's so many things and so many ways it's being created mental health support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's important that people know that, they're not doomed if the one therapist that they connect with is not the right one, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not permanent, right? You have choices and you can make choices to see someone different.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because
Mm-hmm.
I think some people would give up easily, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh God, I went and it's terrible, I'm never going again. But
Mm-hmm.
you're right. I mean, I've had that. I've walked away from maybe like three. Like I
Mm-hmm.
just didn't. I was like, this is not a vibe for me. I don't enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept looking. Like I want people to not give up after the first couple of tries. Please, please, please.
Right.
Keep going and keep searching.
Right. Keep trying and keep searching. Great messages, Stephanie. So I'm curious about what is it that reflects your untold story in terms of that game-changing inspiration? Would there have been a quote or a book or a place or something? What was it for you?
I would say consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So having that support over the long run and making sure I had it and I wasn't, playing around. The second one is take chances on other people. And in that I mean, if he's a teacher, boss, TA, or certain people in your life, don't be scared to talk about it, because I think you would be surprised at how kind people are. I've never said or talked about this kind of stuff to people and then someone's been like, that's nice, goodbye, like, or put me down. They've always been caring, and I think that can come from a lot of different places and a lot of different people. I think humans and our society, we're so scared to open up and be vulnerable, or tell the truth, really, right? We all kind of
Mm-hmm.
have this facade.
Mm-hmm.
So, trusting in the kindness of others as well. And just being hopeful that there is possibility of growth and change. And things like medication are important. I think there's also a lot of mindfulness, yoga, like all these things are kind of becoming, they're in and they're hot.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, some of those things really work, right? And that's the same thing with medication. You have to get on the right one, but when you do, it can really change your life. I've been on every antidepressant possible. I've been on a lot, like trying them and seeing what worked. And CAMH was doing a study where they would do a cheek swab and you'd set it in, and they would, based on, I believe, your DNA and genetics, they would tell you which medications worked and which ones didn't. And this was right before I went on the one that was kind of the game changer for me. And it
Mm-hmm.
was scary how accurate it was. It lined up with everything that I had been
Mm-hmm.
through in terms of my journey with medication. And
Mhm.
it allowed me and made me focus. And, my discussion with my doctor, let's do this one. And that
Mhm.
was the one. So yeah, I'm still like in awe of how
Well, it sounds
accurate it was.
incredible.
Yeah.
Does this test have a name, or is this something that people can get?
I'm not sure. I don't remember the name, but I do believe the website's still up from the research that was happening. So I'll share it with you, and
Okay.
perhaps you put it in the credits so people can check it out.
Sure. Absolutely. That sounds amazing. I'm really glad that you came across that study and you were able to participate in it and have things line up for you to be able to take the medication that you needed to take. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I'm thankful.
Mhm. Mhm. So, how are you findable? If people want to connect with you, how are you findable? What are the platforms that you're findable on?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I focus on workplace mental health.
Okay.
I'm on social media, so Instagram, Twitter. I'm not a TikTok queen woman yet, so I'm still working on that. But and my website as well that has everything.
Yeah, we'll add that all to the show notes so that people can reach out to you when they would like to. So that's perfect. So, guess what, Stephanie?
Yes.
You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations.
Thanks. I didn't think I would share so much, but you got this. You got it out of me. You did it. You did a good job.
All right. So, what was it like? What's this experience like for you to be able to kind of talk about it from a different lens?
I'm very happy I did this because you're making me realize everything I've been through, how much I've changed and grown, how
Hmm.
capable I am, how I can help others. This conversation actually has helped me a lot and where I am today, right? And how I want to
Hmm.
keep being motivated. That's my goal. I want to stick to it.
Hmm.
It's hard to be an
Hmm.
entrepreneur, right? And that's what I'm doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
But this
Hmm.
conversation has kind of solidified a few things for me. So thank you.
Oh, no, that's amazing. Stephanie, I just want to take a moment to say that I am humbled to hear that for all that you were able to share with me today. It has been clearly an incredible journey that you've been on. And not only have you walked an incredible path, but the path also that you're choosing to lead from as part of your work is incredible as well. And I know that there's still a bunch of secrets and things that you did decide to, keep a secret. But in all those secrets, whether they've been shared or not, you've taken incredible steps. You've taken incredible risks and you've had an incredible upward climb where you faced more than a few incredible, unexpected things. And so I just sit here fully inspired and from a very gracious place to be able to have heard each part of what you were able to share today and that you did it in such a clear way in terms of who you are and owning your story. So thank you for the deep conversation and for all the daring and sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Once again, Stephanie, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.